Well, thank you so much to the Gail Borden Library for having me. Again, as Sadia said, my name is Marlon Glenn. I'm the financial wellness educator with KCT Credit Union. And again, as the financial wellness educator, my full intention is really just education. Anything finances, whether that's how to build a budget or a spending plan, or how to pay off debt, which is our next one, to home buying, to banking basics. So really my position is just trying to get you out as much financial education as I possibly can. So let's see, I'm not sure if I am sharing my screen still or not, but I do have.
Yeah, I do see your screen.
Okay. I see an attendance.
Yeah, let me end that. I just launched it to have people.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
I wasn't sure if that was on my end or.
Sorry. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I do want to thank you all for joining me today. The intent of the seminar today is really just to talk, hopefully to get you in a frame of mind of savings, and knowing how important it is to save, how important it is to have an emergency account. And how to actually manage your money. So I believe that the initial title that I had given the Gail Borden Library was how to build a basic spending plan, a basic budget. It's really, they go hand in hand. It's a 5-step spending plan. So once you have an actual budget, this is your plan. This is how you're going to manage your money day in and day out. So we'll talk extensively about that and why that is important. A couple of shocking stats that I like to start off with from GoBankingRates.com. As of the end of 2019, so 2019, last year, almost 70% of Americans said they have less than $1,000 in a savings account. Less than $1,000. 45% of Americans say that they have zero, so nothing, in a savings account. 45%. And then 33% of Americans say that they are living paycheck to paycheck, which is, again, they don't have anything in their savings account. So those are some pretty shocking statistics. Maybe not shocking, maybe more scary. Because again, we'll talk about the importance of having an emergency fund and a savings account, and hopefully get you to the point where you can get one started. So I always like to start off the seminar with a little bit of a challenge. If you don't already have a savings account, the challenge would be to start a change jar. And I like this. I like that I'm on camera, because usually I'm doing this seminar in person, and I always say a change jar, because these days, it's no surprise that most of us are not using cash, especially now through this pandemic, where a lot of the big stores are not even taking cash. A lot of places are talking about no cash is allowed. So when I'm talking about starting a change jar, this used to be something that people used to do to throw their change in a bucket or in a jar. And you'd actually be surprised how quickly this adds up. However, again, because not a lot of us are using cash anymore, we might not have a lot of change in our pockets. But there is plenty of websites, plenty of apps out there that are available for you to do this virtually, to do a virtual change jar. So my advice is, if you don't carry around a lot of cash, if you don't use cash a lot, then maybe look into starting a virtual change jar. Qapital, and that's Qapital, that's Qapital with a Q, is an app that is a pretty decent app. There's also Digit is another app that you might want to look into. If your financial institution doesn't offer something like Save the Change, some financial institutions do offer those types of services. Look at your financial institution first, and then you can Google, Save the Change apps. Those are really good ways to at least start some sort of savings. The point is to start that savings account. I would challenge you to do $1 a day. Most of us probably know what direct deposit is. Most of us probably have our paychecks directly deposited. My question would be is how much of your paycheck is actually going into a savings account every month? There's many budgeting rules out there, but there is a rule. It's the 50-30-20 rule, which says that if you divided your net income, this is the income that actually comes into your home every month, meaning after taxes. If you divided that net income into 50% needs, 30% wants, and 20% savings, that would be a great rule to go by. Now, personally, I think that 20% is a little challenging if you don't already have a savings account, but maybe you start with 10%. Maybe you start with 5%. Whatever it is that you can manage, whatever it is that you can start with. And I kind of tend to challenge my seminars with do $1 a day. If you can go into work tomorrow and change your direct deposit so that you are depositing $1 every day into that savings account. If you get paid weekly, that's $7 a week. If you get paid bi-monthly, bi-weekly, that's roughly about $14 every paycheck. You will eventually adjust. You will eventually get used to that, and you'll adjust. So, and that's $1 a day. That's an extra $365 at the end of the year that you will have if you don't already have a savings account. So I would challenge you to get that started as soon as you possibly can. Because there's so many benefits to managing your money. And you managing your money means that you're not allowing your money to manage you. So, the things that you see here on the slide, so freeing up some time and doing things that you enjoy. Once you actually establish a budget and a spending plan, this will be easy. You'll have much less stress knowing when and where your money goes to. And of course, knowing where your money goes will help you achieve your financial goals, whether that's being debt-free, buying a car, eventually buying a house, whatever those goals might be. So most importantly, having control of your money versus, again, your money controlling you. So if you're living paycheck to paycheck, that means your money is actually controlling you, right? You're constantly waiting for that next payday, which means you are not controlling your money. So if you have any of these up there, definitely some questions that you want to ask yourself. So before we get started on the actual budget or spending plan talk, ask yourself some important questions. Do you spend more than what you make? In other words, are you always waiting for that next payday? Do you find yourself browsing Marketplace or Amazon even though you don't need anything? Meaning, are you spending uncontrollably? Do you have that emergency savings account? If you lost your job today, do you have any savings to fall back on? Do you charge instead of saving up? So do you have to put necessities on your credit card because, well, again, you're constantly waiting for that next paycheck? Do you pay yourself last, as is on the screen here? Or do you pay yourself first? Meaning, is there a portion of your paycheck going into a savings account every payday? And finally, it says, do you live beyond your means? If the answer to any of these other questions was yes, you may be living beyond your means. So again, I would suggest that you go into work and maybe change around that direct deposit to see how much you can actually put into that savings account. Just like that change in a jar, any little bit can help. So maybe, do as little as 50 cents a day. whatever you feel is going to make a difference for you. And again, any little bit is going to make a difference. So let's see. So in order to get your budget or your spending plan started and for it to be successful, you do need to set some goals and some SMART goals. SMART meaning specific, measurable, adjustable, realistic, and time-oriented. So, for example, if you simply said, I need to pay off my credit card debt. Well, how many of us have said that? And more importantly, how many times have we said it? So how likely are you to actually reach that goal if you haven't already? However, using SMART goals, which again are specific, measurable, adjustable, realistic, and time-oriented, would mean you saying, I'm going to pay off $1,200 worth of credit card debt, and I'm going to do it within the next 12 months. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to take lunch to work instead of eating out. And I'm going to drink homemade coffee instead of stopping at Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks. So in that example, that's a very specific goal, right? Is you're going to pay off your credit card debt. You're going to pay off $1,200 worth of credit card debt. And you're going to do that within 12 months. And you're going to do it by brown bagging and by maybe not drinking as much coffee, stopping at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts as much. So that's a very specific goal. And one of the reasons that that goal would work is because it's $1,200, right? So you might be thinking to yourself, that's a lot of money. $1,200 is a lot of money. I don't have a savings account. Where am I going to get $1,200 from? Well, if that was the goal, it might be easier to think of it as this is $100 a month. You might still be thinking to yourself, that's a lot of money. $100 a month is a lot of money. But if you break it down even further, that's about $23 a week. So if you think about that, $23 a week, that doesn't seem like a whole lot. Now let's break that even further. That $23 a week translates to about $3.29 a day. Now, if you're one to stop for coffee every morning, that coffee is likely costing you more than $3.29 these days, unless you're swinging through McDonald's and getting $1 coffee every day. But the lines at Starbucks tells me that in most cases, you're paying likely at least $3.29 for just your coffee every day. So if we think about it that way, if we think about, can I save $3.29 every day for the next year? That's a pretty doable goal. That's probably something that a lot of us could probably obtain. So that's the real point of the SMART goals, of setting those specific, whether they're measurable, whether they're adjustable. Could you adjust at $3.29? Can it be just $3 a day? $3 a day seems fairly realistic. Can it be just $1 a day? Does it have to be just $1 a day? If that's the case, then that's what you do. But again, setting those SMART goals, being time-oriented, making them specific, making them measurable, and being able to adjust those goals. Maybe it's not just the coffee. Maybe you cut back, to just 2 or 3 days a week for coffee. And if you eat out for lunch 2 or 3 times a week, maybe you cut that back to just once a week. So making those adjustable and realistic for yourself is really the key. So there are 3 types of goals, and those are for budgeting. This would be your short-term goal. For saving is going to be kind of an intermediate goal. And then your long-term goals, this is going to be more for investments, for retirement. So there is a difference between these, and I just want to make sure that you establish that timeline. For the sake of budgeting, obviously we're going to stick to our short-term goals tonight. And then there are 2 very, very key components to starting a budget and a spending plan, and that is to figure out your true income and then your monthly expenses. So I want to clarify, because I keep saying budget or spending plan. Again, the budget is the actual tool or worksheet, if you will, that you're going to update. And typically this will have a set budget limit on it. This worksheet is usually based on your day-to-day spending. That being said, they work hand in hand. So your spending plan is again going to kind of be the tool that you adjust as needed as things come up. So again, they go hand in hand. A spending plan is really the plan for your budget, so that you can actually budget yourself and limit yourself or limit certain expenses. So neither has to be very complicated. They can be very straightforward tools, but taking the time to actually write these down is key. Now you can plug these into a computer. You can plug these into an app. However, I do suggest that if you do not already have a budget or spending plan in place, that you take the time to actually write this down on an actual piece of paper. Because I always like to tell people that once you actually write things down, I say it to my kids all the time, I say it in my seminars all the time, when you actually take the time to write things down, when it's in black and white, it just seems to become truer, and it becomes real. And a lot of times that's a real eye-opener for most of us. So if you, again, don't already have a budget in place, actually taking the time to write it down, whether that's a worksheet, and I do have worksheets that I can send each one of you if needed, or you can feel free to reach out to Gale Borden Library. I am sure that they can refer you to budget worksheets, because this session is again virtual. I unfortunately could not actually hand each and every one of you an actual couple of sheets actually of what we're going to go over here, but certainly feel free to reach out, or again, kind of Googling everything these days seems pretty easy, but I do very much suggest that you actually print it out in black and white. So a spending plan, this is going to be your roadmap. This is how you're going to figure out whether you're heading in the right direction financially. So it's going to help you determine whether you're living within your means or if your expenses are more than what your actual income actually is. So it's going to help you make informed choices about where your money goes, to help you live a better financial life. It's going to help you meet your savings goals and prepare you for those emergencies. It's going to help you set up that emergency fund if you don't already have one. So without a roadmap for managing your money, you tend to kind of lose control. You tend to have more stress. You're less likely to achieve any of your financial goals, and you can feel very lost and overwhelmed. But with a roadmap, then you will be controlling your path. Whether that path stays the same for years to come or becomes diverted for some reason. And a diversion can be, a new family. It can be a divorce. It can be, there can be lots of reasons that road gets a little diverted. But regardless, your spending plan and your budget will be adjusted accordingly at that point. So once you determine your income and your debt, in order to build a successful spending plan, you will need some flexibility. So as you begin creating and using it, this will be a work in progress. So I want to repeat, this is not going to be something that you're going to start today or tomorrow, and that's going to be it. I have a budget now, and that's the end of it. This is going to be a continuous work in progress. So you'll make adjustments as you go along, and it'll take you several attempts sometimes to determine certain categories and amounts and what actually works for you. So there's 5 pretty standard steps to starting a successful spending plan, as you can see here. Again, this is going to be based on your net income. So this is your take-home pay. So we'll look at what that might include here next. But Then we're going to go ahead and take a look and make a list of all your monthly expenses. That's from groceries and toiletries to rent or mortgage payments. You know, whatever payments you have, we're going to make sure to include all of those. In the third step, you would subtract those two figures to determine what your discretionary income is. Your discretionary income is, this is what you have left over at the end of the month after everything has been paid. And at that point, you're going to determine what your discretionary income goes to, hopefully a savings account. Step 4, you're going to need to plan it out and maybe tweak it, do the actual spending plan. This is where you need to determine how much you can put into your savings account before you actually determine what's actually left to spend. And is there any changes that are needed or existing expenses that can be cut because you're overspending. And then finally, that final step is just managing and making adjustments, you know, wherever necessary as well. So if we start with step 1, these are all of the sources of income that you may have. So a lot of us don't think of our, for example, tax return as a source of income. But again, you need to include all of the sources of income, any sources of money coming into your household. So any of these that you might see on here, you know, most of us think of our paycheck as our only source of income. But again, maybe you get a tax return, maybe you get annual bonuses, maybe you get commission checks. Maybe you have a stimulus check that's still sitting around and hopefully we're going to get another one, right? So those are all forms of income. So you need to take those all into account. The key is to make sure to include all of the income. There's again, apps out there, you know, that are great for helping you calculate income. I have worksheets that are available if you would like to get in contact with me. I would certainly be happy to share those tools, but there's plenty of tools out there. And this can be as simple as a piece of notebook paper, and you sit down and you think about, okay, this is how much my paycheck is every week. And typically there's four weeks in a month. You know, my suggestion would be that you choose a specific date on a month on a calendar. So if today is the 8th of the month, you go from the 8th to the 8th. Okay, so sometimes there's going to be 30 days, sometimes there might be 31 days, you know, whatever the case might be. So the point is you need to calculate all of your income regardless of where that's coming from. Okay, so and there is plenty of financial institutions out there. I know we have one that offer you budgeting tools. So you may just be able to use your financial institution's budgeting tool, and that would be fine. Again, I would still suggest to you that you kind of sit down and actually do the math on a piece of paper, but that would be completely up to you. So after we've calculated our income, what our monthly income is, we move on to figuring out where is our money actually going. This is going to be a little bit more difficult. Finding all of your expenses is going to take some time. And again, I would very much suggest to you that you pick a specific date on the calendar and stick to that from month to month. So again, it could be the 8th of every month, it could be the 15th of every month, whatever date you specifically choose. And then most of us are using now our debit card, maybe our credit card. So the easiest way to do that is to go through your either bank statement or your credit card statement and go through all of those transactions and break those out. So if you do look at an expense worksheet, which I was hoping I had one here real quick to just kind of show you at a glance on the screen here. But expense worksheets are typically going to be very lengthy because most of us have quite a few expenses that we go through on a monthly basis. So it can be something as simple as a worksheet like this. I'm sure that you can't quite see that, but basically this, you write down what your expense is, whether it's a fixed expense or something that's flexible. So for example, your groceries are going to be a flexible expense, and then you're going to write the amount there. So it can be as simple as this. It can be as simple as a sheet of notebook paper. You write down what your expense was, whether this is something that's going to stay the same every month, and how much it is. So once you've calculated all of those expenses for the month, and again, you want to keep in mind, just like the image on there has, you want to keep in mind that you might have expense for clothing, you might have an expense for postage, you obviously are going to have a grocery expense, for gifts, for phones, for cable. So all of your monthly expenses, whether that's cigarettes or soda or eating out, coffee, whatever those are, you need to go through and account for each and every one of those expenses for the month. So what I would suggest is that if you have a family, including children, that maybe you kind of do this as a family activity. You take a look at that statement, and maybe you highlight, in yellow all of your expenses, and maybe your 12-year-old son highlights all his expenses in green, and maybe your husband highlights all his expenses in blue, and maybe your daughter highlights all her expenses in pink, right? So this can be a family activity. It can be something that's kind of fun. It doesn't have to be as tedious as I'm making it sound. So, but this activity is going to help you kind of identify those little expenses that maybe you are not even aware of. So, and don't forget that we're I said it at the beginning, we're trying to change our mindset, right, and our habits. And how we're looking at money. So this is definitely going to be the activity that is going to be a real eye opener for most of us. And again, writing it down is going to make it that much more real for a lot of us. So, and I talked about fixed and flexible expenses. You also have periodic expenses. That means your fixed expenses are going to be maybe your rent or your mortgage, right? Those are the same every month. Maybe your car payment, these are going to be the same every month. Your flexible expenses are going to be more the groceries, maybe clothing, maybe your utilities that happen every month, but are flexible. They kind of change from week to week, month to month. And then you have your periodic expenses, which could be maybe you don't pay these every month. These are maybe more on a quarterly basis or semi-annual basis. So if you're a homeowner, maybe you pay your own real estate taxes. These would be due twice a year. Maybe some of you pay your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance on a quarterly basis. So you need to recall and kind of look at all of your expenses in that way and break them out for a monthly basis at that point. So for example, if you pay your auto insurance every 6 months and it's $600 for the year, well, that means you pay $300 twice a year. You need to break that down. So that means that you're paying $50 a month. So you need to write that on your expense worksheet as a $50 monthly expense. Okay. And then at the bottom there, we have our necessary expenses, our personal expenses, our discretionary expenses, and then all of our miscellaneous. So our necessary expenses, these are our basic needs. So this is, shelter, food, utilities, insurance, anything medical, all of your debts, so credit card, things like that. These are all, you need to pay these. And then discretionary examples could be something that is not really needed for survival. So this is going to be more your vacations or entertainment, going to the movies, whatever it is that you do for entertainment, any kind of special clothing, anything like that. Personal, obviously, getting your hair done, getting your nails done, those types of things. And then your miscellaneous, this is going to include any kind of unplanned expenses. So this is an invitation to a birthday party, and now you have to buy a birthday gift. So this could fall under your miscellaneous expenses. Okay, so you got to just kind of think about all of those expenses. Again, talk a little bit about tools, online tools that you can use, regardless of what method you use. Make sure that this works for you. Make sure that it's easy for you. We're all very, very different. Some of us tend to be, kind of overthink things and try to be, very, very, very well organized. We might want, something more of a spreadsheet, whereas some of us might just do better with a notebook in front of us. So whatever method you use, just make sure that it works for you. Also, when it comes to apps, there's a lot of great apps as well for budgeting. So if your financial institution doesn't already offer a budgeting app, I believe most of us do, but if they don't, or maybe you're just not partial to it, there's a lot of great apps out there, like Simple Budget, I believe is one of them. Good Budget, there's a Simple Budget, there's a Good Budget. There's an Envelopes app, and that's Envelopes, so Envelopes. So that's a pretty good app as well. So whatever works for you, make sure that it actually is easy for you. Otherwise, if it gets too hard, too difficult, it starts getting overwhelming, and what happens is most of us go, I'm done with this. So regardless, be sure that you are communicating. So if you are using an app, if you are using some kind of online program, this does still need to be a household project. So you do still need to communicate. This includes the whole family. This is how you're going to find some of those spending leaks. This is how you're going to find where is all our money going, because I'm showing that we bring in $2,000 a month and that our expenses are only $1,500 a month. Where's that extra $500 at? So this is where it's very, very important that you actually communicate and talk about this. I would say definitely meet regularly. So even though you're going to choose one date on that calendar, I would say maybe you make this a weekly family meeting where you allow all of your family members to participate in the discussion. Even the kids, right? So everybody's more satisfied when they've been part of a solution, when they've been part of a decision. So, wherever you can involve the whole household, that's going to be best. It's going to also help you to clearly identify any problems. Where is the overspending? Is one person a spender and the other person's an actual saver? Is there a problem with, compulsive or impulsive shopping? Is there just simply no plan? So make sure to listen to each family member and ask questions and clarify, understand each person's values and attributes towards money. Just make sure that you're not playing the blame game. More like I feel rather than you don't is always a better choice. So be ready to compromise and to negotiate if needed. So consider making this a fun, maybe you do a contract with each individual of the household. Once you can kind of determine the expenses that individual needs, that each individual in the household needs and can be allowed, maybe you do a cute little contract of some sort, so that there's no, misunderstandings later on. So this can really be, a fun activity for everybody. So now that we figured out that income and those expenses, we're assuming that you've gone through all of that. You've made it as fun as you possibly can. And we've included savings in there. Okay, so once you determine this is how much income we have, we have $2,000 a month that we bring in. Our actual expenses, our real expenses, once we've figured everything out, are actually $1,500. Well, that means that we have an extra $500 left over at the end of the month. We're going to say that out of that $500, we're going to put $300 into our savings account every month, right? So now we're going to have an extra $200 at the end of the month. So this is where you need to kind of balance that income and those expenses. Do those balance. They need to balance equally, so that you're, again, including savings. So at the end of the month, at that $500, if, ideally you would put $500 into your savings account. But we do have to be realistic as well. So we all need some sort of fun money, some sort of rainy day money. And that's where that additional $200 that's left over. So if we're going to include $300 into our savings account, then we're going to have an additional $200 left over at the end of that month, right? And where are we going to put that? What are we going to do with that? Does that mean that we just go out and have a $200 meal every month? No, it doesn't mean that. That means that you put that into a separate savings account, your fun money, right? Or maybe it's a Christmas club account. Maybe you start a Christmas club account and that $200 goes in there, and come November 1st, that money goes into a checking account so that you can do your Christmas shopping. So, but that third step again is to balance that income and those expenses. So once you do that, let's see how you flow. And this is really what your two sheets should look like. So on the left there, you see your income. So this is not just a salary, but also part of savings, a tax refund, and some gifts, right? Because grandma always sends money, or mom always sends money. So you've got total income of $40,047. And then your expenses there on the right include taxes, mortgage, groceries, and eating out, miscellaneous, medical, clothing, auto, utilities, home maintenance, and look at that, your savings. So this includes $1,200 worth of savings, as well as, gifts that you have gifted, and insurance. So these balance out $40,047 as well for the expenses. This is what your budget really is. Okay. The fourth step, again, reviewing and communication is key. Where are some of those spending leaks, and what are some examples of maybe changes that you can make? So, could you eat out less? Could you eat those leftovers instead? Do you have actual leaky faucets? Running water is a big one. Impulse shopping. So, these are your day-to-day pitfalls usually, and they could really drain your budget dry. So that's where it's incredibly important to know where you're spending all of your money. What are all those monthly expenses, the day-to-day? So that you can figure out, where can I actually cut back? Is it the cable bill? Is it the phone bill? Is it that daily coffee stop? Making mini cuts, starting small, can make a huge difference for a lot of people. So tracking and calculating those spending leaks is hugely important. And I do want to just mention, there's a great website. It's called finishrich.com. where you can actually kind of track and calculate all those little spending leaks. And that's kind of a fun website if you're into that. So finishrich.com is kind of a cool website to check out. So maybe you you know, you do need to consider some ideas to help you save. So, you know, consider maybe consolidating. Reach out to your financial institution. I know we offer what's called a debt checkup. So consider to see if they have something similar to that, where they'll go through all of your debt with you, all of the rates that your debt is accruing. So the interest rates on your debt, you know, they should be able to go through all of that debt with you and sit down with you and say, okay, this is where your credit card's at. You have a balance of X amount of dollars and they're charging you 25% on X amount of dollars. So, you know, obviously that's a debt that you may want to consider consolidating. So, you know, ask to see if your financial institution does anything such as a debt checkup, to determine whether, you know, refinancing or consolidation is an option for you. You know, bundling insurance coverage is always going to yield you some discounts. What I usually like to remind people of is don't get married to any one company. So really kind of shopping around, you know, not just your insurance, but shopping for your cable bill, shopping your, you know, utilities, you know, really just kind of shopping and always consistently reminding yourself of, you know, when was the last time that I actually checked to see how much I am paying for my auto insurance, and could I be getting a better deal? So, you know, taking the time to actually do that shopping around can really save you a lot of money. Thinking about whether you are getting a raise. You know, if you get a raise, maybe you bank that difference. So banking some of that additional cash can really, really be, you know, a good budget starter for you. So, you know, maybe at the end of the year, you get a bonus. This can be a huge start for your emergency fund and for your savings account. We talked about an emergency fund. Having an emergency fund is huge. You know, we've just recently gone through this where, you know, people's maybe your hours got cut at work. Maybe you're just not getting as much income as you used to. If you had an emergency fund and you had a savings account, this might get you through some of those hard times. You know, so obviously doing all of these things that we just talked about, and kind of having your money in order and managing it so that when something like that happens, you know, God forbid we go through another pandemic, or it gets worse, or, you know, we're in very kind of unsure times right now. You know, really kind of taking the time to manage your money at this point, and start a budget or a spending plan is very, very important right now if it's possible for you. So, and having that emergency fund. So an emergency fund is really kind of separate from your savings account. An emergency fund is for just that emergencies. So if you had, you know, if your car broke down, instead of having to charge that and accumulate more debt and end up paying, you know, more for that, you have that emergency savings account where, you know, you can take that money out. So if your car breaks down and you need $500, if you are able to take that $500 out of a savings account, out of an emergency fund, it's not going to cost you any more than $500. You put it on a charge card, on a credit card, and you don't pay that $500 off at the end of the month, now it's costing you more than that $500. That's the way that debt works. That's the way that interest works on a credit card. So, you know, you may end up paying $1,000 for a $500 repair if that credit card doesn't get paid off for a few months down the road. So that is really the theory behind an emergency fund, and having money available to you so that you don't end up paying more than what you need to in the long run. That's separate than your savings account. Again, I talked about that additional $200. putting that in your savings account for a rainy day, for maybe a vacation, for those intermediate goals that you might have. So really kind of thinking about that as you're putting together your spending plan and your budget is also very important. The step down principle that you see here, this is really just, as I mentioned earlier, maybe doing little mini cuts. So really just being aware of what your spending habits are. When you've gone through and figured out all of your monthly expenses, you'll become very aware of what your spending habits are, of what is important to you. So, maybe having 200 cable channels is what's important to you. Maybe that's what keeps you sane. And that's okay, because we all have different priorities. So that could be what keeps you sane from day to day. So maybe cutting back on your cable bill is not an option, but maybe cutting out your daily coffee run is an option, or maybe cutting out your daily lunch with girlfriends is a better option for you. So really just kind of being aware of that step down principle of reducing something gradually instead of really kind of cold turkey. Some of us do very well going cold turkey and just saying, that's it, no more. And some of us don't. Some of us do need to kind of gradually step that back, which is okay. So whatever works for you, but just kind of being aware of what those habits are and being aware of what you are able to actually change in your situation. Some resources for saving money. Again, I would urge you to reach out to your financial institution's website or their app to see what is available there. But americasaves.org is a great website, consumerfed.org, and then energy.gov and fueleconomy.gov are also really great websites to kind of go into and check out. Some more money saving tips would be, if you're a shopper, which I think a lot of us became online shoppers here since March. You may want to look into like Rakuten, which used to be Ebates, but now is Rakuten. So this is a website that will give you cash back as you do your online shopping. Coupons.com for any coupons. Groupon, obviously a lot of us are very familiar with Groupon. So when you are going to treat yourself, going through maybe a Groupon can be a great idea. So there's lots of great websites and apps out there to be found. So you just need to kind of go through and actually look for those and find them and get into that mindset of every dollar counts. Every cent really is going to count, and it's going to add up for me if I'm just now starting a savings account for myself. So, and then finally that fifth step is just kind of managing that system, committing to actually the long term of your system. Really kind of going back once a week and saying, is this actually working? Or did I forget to update something? Did I forget one of my expenses? And really kind of committing to changing your habits and your way of thinking about your finances. That's a huge step for a lot of us. So how do you really plan for this? Well, in closing, I would tell you that, again, you want to set some SMART goals for yourself. And again, that SMART stands for specific, measurable, adjustable, realistic, and time-oriented. So really setting some goals for yourself. And again, if we were here live, I would give you some worksheets and say, here, write down a couple of SMART goals for yourself that you have for the next 6 months. You know, and most of us are going to start with either I'd love to start a savings account, and in the next 6 months, I'd love to have, I don't know, $500 in it. Or a lot of us are usually going to start with, I need to pay off some credit card debt, some high interest debt. You know, so setting yourself that SMART goal, maybe adding up how much that debt actually is and starting small. You know, if you have $20,000 worth of credit card debt, that is a lot of debt. You need to start small. So maybe you choose one credit card that you're going to pay off, and that is your short-term goal. This is where, again, reaching out to a financial institution and having them go over, you know, these options and any options that you might have will come in handy. Really kind of having some help, knowing where to start. And again, I am the financial wellness educator with the credit union, and I would be more than happy to get you started with any worksheets or anything that I can help with. So I think we are just shy of 8 o'clock right now, and I'm going to see if we have any kind of questions that I could possibly answer. So otherwise, I might give you some time back tonight.
All right, great. Thank you, Marlon. That was wonderful. Hopefully you all joining us tonight got a lot out of this. I think Marlon did a great job putting it together and giving her time generously to provide all this information. So it looks like no one has put any questions in. So you did such a great job, Marlon.
Well, or they're all very overwhelmed. A lot of information. I understand that.
But as Marlon said, just feel free to either email us at the library, me or Marlon at the credit union. If you have any questions or if you'd like to get the handouts emailed to you, we can certainly do that.
Yes, absolutely. If anybody is interested in the presentation, I would be more than happy to either email it directly or I will send it to Sadia, and she will forward that on if anybody would like.
Okay. I guess if no one has questions, then we wish you all a very good evening. And thanks again for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Good night, Marlon.